Today we're going to look at fabricating some pork tenderloin. Now, pork tenderloin is something that usually comes already pre-packaged. This is by Smithfield, and they do have a couple of pork tenderloins per package. And so what I did was I pulled out those two pork tenderloins here from another package, and I just kind of want to show you some of the variants and differences between the two loins. So I'm going to move this away. I just wanted you to see what it looks like when you purchase it. You'll probably get 10 to 12 of these in a case. And then you will use them when you need to. So I'm going to move this off to the side. Now, really important, I want to show you here, look at the differences between size. So this guy here is a lot bigger and thicker in size than this pork tenderloin right here. And so it's a really good idea to weigh them out to get an idea of kind of how much they weigh per. This guy was right about 1.5 pounds, and this one here was right about 1.16, 1.2 pounds maybe. So it's quite a bit of a difference as far as the kind of yield you're going to get out of these. So the first step is understanding that you do have tapering too, right? So in the loin, you see how it gets thicker on one side and it tapers down to another side. So when we talk about fabricating pork tenderloin, things you need to keep in mind is how much does it weigh per loin, and what is the exact type of cut or size that you're going to get. Are you doing 4 ounces? Are you doing 5 ounces? Are you doing 6 ounces? And then keeping in mind that it tapers a little bit. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and pull these guys out and put them on the cutting board. And again, it gives you a little bit better idea. I'll move this off to the side. I'm just going to take a little bit of paper towel and I'm just going to wipe them down a little bit from the excess moisture that they have on them. And again, I want you guys to see, you know, this size difference is pretty dramatic between these two in the package. You know, I mean, this guy is really nice, you know, he's really nice and thick and really heavy. We have a really thin tender here, probably coming from two different size animals. So usually the larger animal will produce the larger and the smaller will produce a little bit smaller. So we just need to be careful in how we fabricate these. All right, so since there's not a lot of fabrication that needs to be done, what we want to do is we want to definitely look at it and make sure we remove any of the excess fat from the loins. I'm going to go ahead and put the smaller one off to the side for now. I'm going to pull out this bigger one, take my knife, and just take a look at it. There's not much you need to do. They're pretty clean. Some of this fat here is going to provide a lot of great flavor. Again, you see a little bit of a sinule here on this side, and that can kind of pull right off. You can see I pulled that off with my finger. You can come back in with your knife and just kind of remove a little bit of that as well. And then here, the one thing you want to make sure is you're going to see a strap right here of silver skin. Now this little strap of silver skin can be really chewy, so it's really important that we remove this silver skin. If you look at the smaller tender here as well, you see that strip of silver skin. And you can see when they were fabricated in the plant, it looks like they took some of that silver skin off on the bottom side. And based on how this cut looks, it looks like maybe they even cut some of that tender off just a little bit. So we'll keep this guy off to the side. I'm gonna come in here. I got a little bit of excess fat here. I'm just gonna remove a tiny bit of that. And then I'm gonna come in here and I wanna get some of the silver skin off. So I'm gonna come in with my knife, go about 1/4 of an inch down, come up 45-degree angle out from the meat, create a little bit of a flap like so. I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna hold this flap while I keep my knife angled up, and I just want to lightly slice through this meat so that I can remove some of the silver skin here without trying to take too much off of the meat itself. So I got one little strap there off, and that's a pretty thick strap, so that's good. I got a smaller little piece right here. I'm just going to come in here with my knife. Again, same process. We want to try to remove that silver skin, so we're just going to remove that silver skin from that side, coming down and then cleaning it up like so. You just want to be careful. You don't want to remove too much or you'll start separating this smaller piece of muscle up here. I do want to clean that up just a tiny bit more, just because I do not want it to be chewy for the customer. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to cut and clean up right to that point there and come down and kind of shave that off. So now it's pretty clean. We can check both sides. This side, really not much here. It's a little bit of fat here. I'm just going to trim a tiny bit of that off. And that small little thin layer of fat there is okay to keep on. Here, again, just a tiny bit. And we're just gonna wanna trim it up just a little bit to remove some of the excess fat. All right, now that we have the silver skin, and now that we have some of the excess fat removed, we're going to take our loin. Now we talked about it being important to remember how it tapers. So we're going to cut this into sizing. And the big thing to remember is when it tapers down to the tail, you're going to want to cut a little bit further up depending on what size you want to get. You can't cut the same thickness from the thick side than you can from the tail side, or you're not going to get the same sizing. So let's say I have a scale here, and let's just say I'm shooting for a let's go with a 5-ounce portion, right? So let's cut a 5-ounce portion from the tail side, and I'm just going to judge here, and this just takes a little bit of practice. I'm going to judge to see what I think the 5-ounce portion is. Now I'm going to come in here and come straight down on it because we can kind of flatten it out a little bit. And I'm going to guess probably about here. I'm going to come down and let's weigh this and see where we're at. This is a good idea to turn the scale on first. Okay. And let's put that on. And I'm right at 5.1 ounce. It's 5.1 ounces, so not too bad for my first cut. Now let's move this off to the side. I'm only over by like 1/10 of an ounce. So now what we need to do here is I want to cut another 5-ounce portion from this loin so that we can keep it consistent. As you can tell, it's not tapering, it's a little bit thicker. So I'm going to need to pull back just a little bit and kind of judge, because it's going to weigh a little bit more. So really important to understand that we're going to come in here, cut another portion. I'm going to say, I'm going to go probably about right here. We'll see how well I did. Again, let's put a piece of paper up on our scale. And let's weigh this guy and see where we're at. And I'm right at 5.1 again. So I was really consistent. So it got really up 5.2. It's just a little bit heavier, but I'm staying pretty consistent. So the biggest thing to remember is when you're cutting your pork tenderloin, you got to remember that it tapers down like so. And you're going to get your portion sizes. If you're going to cut portion size, you can always start from the tail, work your way up, or you can start from the heavier side and work your way down. Rule of thumb is starting from the heavier side, working your way down, because then you'll minimize the amount of scrap that you have at the bottom for utilizing in other dishes. So again, based on judgment here for 5-ounce portion, it's a little bit thicker. I'm going to come in, I'm going to cut right here, and then it tapers down just a little bit here. I'm thinking I can get pretty close to a 5 and maybe a 4.5. Going to be close, so we'll see. And let's weigh these guys out and see where they're at. Maybe a little heavier on this guy, 5.4, just a dash heavier. And this guy may be a little bit on the 5 range, maybe just a dash light, 4.3. We got a 4.3 and a 4.4. So we got, these two are really close. These guys are in the range here for the 5-ounce. And again, it's just gonna take a little bit of practice. And getting down that, making sure that when you're cutting your portions, you need to make sure that you're scaling it properly and you're cutting the loin properly so that you can provide the correct amount of portions that you need for either a lunch or dinner service.